Back today with another video. We're going to talk about how you can contribute to Mycroft, or any really community for that matter, but we're going to talk about the Mycroft community today, and how you can contribute even if you don't know how to code, right? Even if you just want to contribute to the documentation, for example, in this video where you notice a mistype or there's something you want to add or that's missing or whatever, right? And you want to update that and help contribute back. So what we're going to do today, I noticed that more recently actually I added this Mark 1 stuff, so if there's stuff missing from here then you can contribute or let me know and I can add it. So for today I realized that I haven't updated the Docker install. And so the Docker piece right now is very still development oriented. It's not really ready for prime time yet. We're working on a few things. I'm trying to help kind of get it where it needs to be. We're working on getting some of the repo stuff fixed so that it can pull directly from the repo. Right now I'm having to kind of maintain the packages and I've got to get it updated. But it works in a container and it's good for development and testing and things like that. And I'll kind of talk about that as I go along a little bit maybe. And that might need to be a separate video because there's a lot about it and I'll probably do that. But either way, we're going to talk about how to contribute to the documentation. So for example, I need to update this to talk about where you can install it from Docker and how it works and all of that, right? So what we're going to do is if you go over to GitHub, and I'll put this link in the description, but if you go to GitHub and then go to the Mycroft AI and look through there, you'll find one of the repos is called Mycroft Core Documentation. And it even says, hey, this is the documentation for docs.mycroft.ai, which is where we're at, right? So this is how the code looks, and it's fairly easy to understand if you read through it and look through it. So for example, the part we're trying to go to, right, is under installing and running, and then we're wanting under installation, and then we want the Docker install, for example. And so this would be no different if you needed to add another section. You would add another folder, with this same kind of structure. So and this file actually is, just to kind of tell you, this is the main piece, right? So Mycroft setup, introduction, right? And then this is the getting started, setting up Mycroft and so forth, right? So if we look at, whoops, sorry, wrong link. So if we look at this, you can see setting up Mycroft, and it's got the git clone and all that. So the way that it works, that's this page, right? So the main page is going to be the root file. Sorry, let me move this out of the way so I don't keep doing that. So this is under installation docsmd, so that's going to be the main root file under getting started for installation, right? You can see up here installation, and then the next tab is going to have git clone install, which would be git clone install. So for example, we're going to want to go to 05 docker install, and I know that's it because if I go to docker install, right, it's called docker install. You can see WIP, work in progress, more information coming soon. And if we double check, that's what it should say inside this file, right? And if I look at it, see, same thing. If you look at the raw, this is how you can see how the code looks, right? So this is just Markdown. I'll put a link to this description in GitHub, but they have a nice little cheat sheet on Markdown and how the headers and the list and images and all that fun stuff work. So I'll link you to this in the video as well. So you could technically edit it here. I mean, we could come back and just say, yeah, I want to edit it right here. And what it'll do is it'll submit a PR. So, I mean, we can do that, which might be the easiest for, for most people to start with. So, I mean, I'll show you like that to start with, and then maybe in a future video, I can explain on how you can maybe pull it down on your own local machine and, create a branch and do that. But I think that'll be more of a longer in-depth video and maybe more in-depth for most people. So I'm going to start with something simple. And rather than do all that and pull it local, which you can see I do, right? I did a git clone and pulled it local on my machine, and I can modify whatever I want inside of a branch and then push it up. But for today, we're just going to talk about using it directly inside the editor, right? So this is the code, and then I can see the preview changes, and it'll look a little bit different on the site. Some of this stuff won't show up, but we can at least make sure that the bolding and the headers and everything look correctly. So what I'm going to do is actually cheat a little bit because I've already written a lot of this, and so has Paul, that pretty much wrote all of this, and I'm trying to help him keep it, keep it up to date. So basically, there's a README already here that you can see that talks about how to use the development environment and the commands and all that, right? So what we could do is just copy all of this and put this in to the documentation, which is what I'm going to do to start with, and then we can kind of modify it as we go. So in order to do that, this is actually this README file. So if I click that, you'll see obviously it's going to show me just this now. Well, this is the kind of pre-version of it, if you will. It's the executable kind of version. So to get the actual, excuse me, raw markdown, we just click on the raw, or we can just click edit here, which is even easier. And now I'm looking at that code, right? So what we can really do at this point is just copy this out. And come over here, and I'm going to paste it inside of this for now. And we're going to get rid of this getting set up with Docker for now. Just do this here. So now you can see I have all of that. So in changing this, we're going to change it up a little bit and say, instead of Mycroft Docker development environment, we're going to say Mycroft Docker dev getting set up. And then we're going to kind of put in here, this is a development setup, not really ready for production use yet. Right. And so now, as we go through, it's going to say how to build and run it, and it's going to talk about where to pull it from and how to build it and so forth, and if you want the interactive CLI. So this is all already documented pretty well if you know how to use Docker, and I'll do a separate video on like actually getting started with all this as well. But you can see it kind of goes over all the basics, and each one of these are just headers. So you can see with the way that the markdown works, these are just headers, right? So this is the top one, and this one's below that, and now this one's kind of below that, and so forth, right? So if I'm done with this, let's just say this is what I want to submit for now, right? Just to kind of get it going. Then you can see what it says. You're editing a file in a project you don't have write access to. Submitting a change to this file will write it to a new branch, and it's going to then fork it, right? So it's going to take it out of my branch that I already have, and then fork a branch off of that, and then submit a PR or a pull request, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say updated docs for Docker install, and then I'm just going to put in here updated the docs to include the information. And you could put more information in here if you're putting like minimal code. Like if this were just you're contributing code, for example, this doesn't really change any different. You could put sample of what the code is and what it looks like. I'll put in another video maybe later on how you could even build your own local version of this, like an HTML, to kind of see if it's going to work or not as well. And maybe that's something I'll do separate too. But either way, we're going to do this and then submit it and do propose file change. And what's going to happen is you're now going to see I'm in the base fork Mycroft core documentation, and dev is where we want to be, and then head, right? And this is it's just created a generic name, patch 2 is what it created, and the head fork is inside of my repo, and it's called Mycroft core documentation. And now what I want to do is it's just showing me, hey, this is what you're adding in to the file, right? And this is what you took out in the red here. And so now I can just create a pull request, and it's going to have that same information in it. And then basically base fork is I want to push it into dev, and I'm bringing it from my patch, right? So now if I create this pull request, and now we're done. Now this will show up as a pull request to the Mycroft team, whatever, and I can now, if I want to, for example, come and say, yeah, hey guys, I wrote a PR, right? So I can come into the documentation and say Docker install docs can be found here. And that way people can click on that link and see directly what it is and review it. And then once they approve that, then that will show up on the website and this will then reflect those changes. So I hope this was useful. Like I said, I'll do some later videos with more in-depth guides on Git cloning and pulling it down and modifying it locally with some code and things like that, and then pushing it back up. But I thought this was an easy way for new people to get started and contribute back to the community without really needing to know a lot of information. You can update the documentation. Just follow the code that's there. There's already kind of templates. If you look on each of the pages and look at the code, you'll see that they actually have to start in a certain way. So if you look even at the base one, right, and you look at the raw, see they have to have kind of this title and then category, and then you can see how they're using YouTube plugins to link this main video, right? So that shows up from there, and then these are the headers and different things, so you can see kind of how the whole process works as you go through it. So I hope this was helpful. Like I said, I'll do some future videos on helping more out and contributing back to the community, but hopefully this will work for everyone. And like I said, follow me on Twitter and on YouTube and wherever else, and hopefully I'll get more of these videos out. And if you have any questions or concerns, just leave some comments. Thanks. Bye.